I'm resident of Collinwood for YouTube. Jules Sage, that's my buddy Patrick McCray. We're here to review the movie CaddyShack. Bill Murray, Chevy Chase, Rodney Dangerfield. I mean, there are a lot of really funny people in this movie, and they play very, very interesting and entertaining characters. Uh, you were talking about the gopher wasn't, Kenny's idea. Let's. What did you think of the gopher?
Well, when I saw the movie in its initial release when it came out,
Yeah,
and it was, and I can't explain it now, but at the time, audiences went crazy over it,
yeah,
and I was in that audience. I mean, I probably saw it opening weekend,
yeah,
so I'd been just a little too young to get the original release of Animal House, but this was kind of an unofficial follow up to Animal House, and I was absolutely transported by this thing. And the gopher was the funniest freaking thing I had ever seen. I mean, I just fell out of my chair laughing at this anarchic, completely mechanical,
yeah,
uh, totally fake gopher puppet, which I later found out was not the writer producer's idea. Doug Kenny, who helped invent National Lampoon,
yeah,
kind of went off on his own and did this movie and faced just constant studio backlash.
yeah.
And so the studio forced him into the gopher. Some executive loved this mechanical gopher and thought it would save the movie. And I hate to say it, kind of like David Lynch and Dune,
Yeah,
it turned out well.
yeah,
Now, that is me saying that I think the gopher would have been very funny in Dune,
yes,
showing
yeah.
up in Arrakis, like looking around.
I think the gopher really fits in with the movie Caddyshack with all the crazy characters that are in this movie, because when you're watching the movie Caddyshack, all I can see is all these characters who are very good actors, and it looks like there's parts where there's that scene where Rodney Dangerfield is in the restaurant and he's dancing around, and it looks like there's a couple cast of characters who are like ready to break character almost but they stop themselves because
Sure,
Dangerfield's that funny. And you
he
know,
is.
and that's the thing too. This movie, it's about this kid who wants to go to college. Well, if you win the caddy tournament, you got a shot. But then he gets involved in this 2-on-2 golf tournament, and he thinks his girlfriend's pregnant. There's a lot of things going on within the course of this movie, and just the comedy of this movie is truly timeless. Like Bill Murray's groundskeeper character Carl is,
Carl.
yeah, it's just so crazy because he's like his boss is like yelling at him. Oh, instead of doing the greens, he goes, "I need you to kill all the gophers," and he's like, "Well, don't you
Oh,
think
all
that'd
the
be a bad,
golfers.
yeah, oh, yeah, don't you think that'd be a bad idea if we killed all the golfers?" It's like, and it's like
I
it's not my
said golfers.
yes, gophers. And he's like, it's not my fault. No one can understand you. It's like the this movie, comedy is all about timing, but this whole movie is timing. The scores, the way they're set up, the whole scenes, like everything clicks. It's like a stack of dominoes. When one starts going, it all goes in this movie.
It
But it
it's a very
fits.
blessed movie.
It is.
You know, I mean, it's just everything comes together. And Kenny, killed himself. Doug Kenny killed himself. That that it's very touching to me that a movie he struggled with so much
Yeah.
and had to fight for
Yeah.
was the massive success that it was.
Yeah. You talked about this was supposed to be, or maybe it was talked about being a part of National Lampoon. Do you think it was supposed to be, honestly, or
I, if not, it sure felt like it. And I
yeah,
think it might have been of a body of projects that Kenny had in mind when he departed National Lampoon. There's a good documentary about National Lampoon that came out a few years ago, and there's a Netflix movie
yeah,
about it. That covers all of that pretty well. I haven't watched them recently, but that's a whole My co-writer David Rains and I have often talked about this golden era of comedy that had all these people from different organizations who kind of knew each other and
Yeah,
bled into each other. You had SCTV,
yeah,
you had Saturday Night Live,
yeah,
you had National Lampoon,
yeah,
and they all kind of intersected with one another. The centerpiece being this legendary production of the musical Godspell, where a bunch of them met each other. There was a long period in the 80s when they were hip and sort of on top of the world in
yeah,
terms of comedy. And inevitably in interviews, whether it was Martin Short or whoever, they would bring up this musical called Godspell that a
yeah,
bunch of them kind of met through. I think Paul Schaefer was involved with it. Um, and But it really was a unique time in film, which somebody's been writing lately about how now their politics are kind of right wing,
yeah,
which I can't believe.
yeah,
But people on the right, as anarchic as they are not, love the humor, love
yeah,
these films.
yeah. And that's the thing. These like the National Lampoon movies are generally funny. Like most of them are. Could I see this
Yeah,
being like a part of it? Sure. I always thought like when I was a kid, because I didn't know any better when I first watched it. I always thought Blues Brothers was, but it wasn't. And it's like okay, fine. I knew later it wasn't, but because I had seen Animal House, and I was just like, holy shit, this movie's crazy. But then you watch this movie, it's like this movie's even crazy too, and has a lot of the same humor. I mean, you got Bill
yeah,
Murray like washing golf balls, and it looks like he's masturbating. It's like what the hell,
yeah,
you know?
yeah. The National Lampoon label kind of got started getting put on everything,
Yeah,
and long after the magazine went belly up, because it's you've got to focus on the magazine and the writers of it, and that's where Animal House came from.
yeah,
And really, other than Vacation, the first Vacation, I don't think any of the other National Lampoon products really came from the magazine. It just became kind of a brand name that they were able to stick on stuff. Uh, but Vacation is based on a story that
yeah,
appeared in National Lampoon's magazine. And that was John Hughes
yeah,
wrote that. That's John Hughes' story. And it's very funny, but his version takes place in the late 50s, I think.
yeah,
And they're going to Disney World, and it's a little darker as these
yeah.
stories go.
Yeah, I do remember watching the movie. I never read the like any of the articles of the magazine, but I remember watching the movie like for the Griswolds, like the National Lampoon's
Sure.
Vacation, and like yeah, and it's really just funny. I mean, it's hilarious.
The magazine was absolutely the cutting edge of dark, angry Vietnam era, post Vietnam era, Watergate era satire, where there was so much about the world. This is before Saturday Night Live came out, uh, that needed attacking, and attacking in the darkest sense. They had a writer who was really, I think, the greatest writer National Lampoon had. So you had Michael O'Donoghue. Michael O'Donoghue went on to be one of the main first writers of Saturday Night Live, and he was a dark guy. And Michael O'Donoghue said one of my favorite quotes, which is making people laugh is the cheapest form of comedy. And his stuff can be really, really dark. And you almost have to get academic to explain why Michael O'Donoghue's humor works. And modern people will be horrified.
Yeah.
One of his most famous pieces was a fake children's book, allegedly written in Nazi Germany, called "Children's Letters to the Gestapo,"
Oh wow.
with dear Mr. Himmler, how do you fit all those people in your oven? We can barely fit a pork roast into ours.
Yeah.
And just getting into, obviously not making fun of the Holocaust, but
Right.
using humor to point out how naive people could be about
Yeah.
this horrible, horrible, horrible organization. But this horrible organization who had their own youth corps.
Yeah.
That alone, once you realize that and you start to think about, well, what the hell did they do? Uh, these questions begin to come up.
I think too, what people need to understand too is with comedy, and especially comedians. Look, Don Rickles was Jewish, and he made fun of like stuff like Hitler and stuff too. Like he would crack one-liners that were just hilarious about it.
Uh, there's a good documentary called The Haunted Smile. I think it's called The Last Laugh. It's called The Last Laugh, and it's about the controversy of making fun of the Nazis,
Yeah,
and that for a lot of Jewish Americans,
yeah,
it is it is the thing that is the bedrock of their sanity, is
yeah.
the ability to do it and the right to do it. And oh gosh, it's a good movie, and it talks to Mel Brooks and Sarah Silverman, and it goes all over the map. Maybe even Rickles.
Yeah. That's the thing too. Like Mel Brooks was a master of making fun of just pure stupidity, like the ignorance of man. Like we did Blazing Saddles, and it makes fun of rednecks, and that's what's great about it. It's like it's hilarious. I
I
mean,
think the reason that Mel's later films, everything kind of after that, are funny, but for me, they're nowhere near as funny, is
yeah,
because humor often works because Mel's humor has a real edge, obviously, when you have a deserving target.
yeah,
And
yeah,
few targets are more deserving than racism, anti-Semitism, and so on.
yeah,
The later films, what are you attacking? Universal monsters? Well,
yeah,
okay.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
why I never found Young Frankenstein funny. I know I'm supposed to. I can quote specific gags from Young Frankenstein I think are hilarious, but as a movie hanging together, it never really worked for me. But that's a side thing.
I'll tell you a movie I thought that was. I know it's not by Mel Brooks, but at least I don't think it is. Two movies I found funny. Obviously, the original Fletch and Fletch Lives were hilarious to me. Um,
Yeah,
I mean, it's just the two insane, and that's the thing. Like comedy, especially this too, Caddyshack. It's not just who's in it; it's how they play their characters off. So because really, Chevy Chase is playing this golfer who owns this lumber yard. He's never at the lumber yard. He's on the golf course all the time. It's like,
Ty
I'm like,
Webb,
and Ty Webb and the judge. The judge is one of the most hilarious characters in this
Judge
movie.
Ephraim
Yeah,
Smales,
yeah,
Judge
and
Smales.
he's the target of a lot of the jokes in this movie, but he sells his ass off to get made fun of. That's the part of it that's
Yeah,
funny.
I mean, Judge Smales is a wonderful villain. And
Yeah,
one of the things I love about his villainy is how gleeful he is about it. I mean, it's almost a Nicholas Blair level of performance. When he gives Danny one piece of bad news after another. Well, the world needs ditch diggers too, but he ends it with, "How about a Fresca?"
yeah.
And in Smales' mind, that really is going to solve everything.
he loses he loses his club that knocks a woman unconscious. Oh, I'll pay for your lunch.
The Billy Barule, oh Billy.
Yeah,
Um, and one of my favorite. I mean, you give me a Judge Smales line, and it's my favorite line until I hear the next Judge Smales line.
yeah,
But I think the two that really stand out. Well, the world needs ditch diggers too.
yes,
And then also you'll get nothing and like it.
yeah,
It's easy to grin when your ship comes in and you've got the stock market beat. But the man who can smile is the man worthwhile when his pants
yeah,
are too tight in the seat. And he laughs and laughs like it's the funniest thing he's ever heard.
yeah.
And it just sort of shows where Judge Smale's mind is.
And it's funny too because when you see Rodney Dangerfield's clubs, like in there, it's like this Radio Shack golf
Oh
club.
yeah, this James Bond thing from Q Branch.
Yeah, the putter that tells him it out good, and he puts it. I'm like, that's just hilarious. I mean, you have a movie that's making fun of a lot of things, not just one specific thing, and you get the gags because, look, I'm a Bond fan, you're a Bond fan, and even if you're not. like you can get the jokes because it's like, okay, that's hilarious because they're sort of making fun of Q, and they're making they're making fun of sex. So, I've always talked about this with horror too. The horror is scary because it touches certain subjects like sex and death. Well, with comedy, sex, death, and racism. They're all easy to make fun of because they're easy targets. And when you get a character like the judge, who's like he's against a certain way or a certain type of people, he's an easy target. But the actor who played him, he sells it so well. He's
Ted
allowing
Knight.
his yeah, he's allowing himself to be the punchline of the jokes, and that makes the movie all the more fun.
Yeah, I think for me it's Knight's uh character's belief
Yeah,
that not only is he right
yeah,
all the time, but he's gleeful about being right all the time. And the more wrong he is, the more gleeful he is about it. And it is such a picture of kind of white privilege run
yeah,
amok.
yeah.
And I think it just works brilliantly.
And then there's like the little things in this movie, like the baby Ruth in the pool that everybody thinks is a turd. It's like it's hilarious because they cue the Jaws music, and it's like, oh Jesus Christ.
Well, okay, so here we have, okay, so let's break that down a little bit and talk
Right,
about
right.
why that scene works, because it is one of the immortal comedy moments in a movie.
Yeah,
And so for one thing, a lot of what happens in humor is you have a disparity between what is stimulating the reaction and the reaction, that one thing is disproportionate to another,
yeah,
and that while the idea of a turd in a pool is terrible, it's not a shark,
right.
and yet people will react strangely enough with the same sort of panic. And then, you've got basic irony going on because the
Yeah,
audience knows something that the characters don't, which
yeah,
is that not only is it not a turd, but it's something very friendly. Everybody loves a baby Ruth.
yeah,
Uh, we probably had never, I at least as a kid, had never thought about the turdian dimensions of a baby Ruth. And so suddenly I realized how many of these things have I eaten
yeah,
in my life, and what does it look like?
yeah,
um and then the punchline, there's this concept in humor called a button,
yeah,
where you have gag after gag after gag, and then you have just one little gag that puts it all into perspective. And
yeah,
the button is where he's in the white suit,
yeah,
the hazmat suit, and he's got the brush, and somehow the turd has, or the baby Ruth has inexplicably survived, and in the stark white pool it's just this one thing that he's managed to handle. And after all of that, he does something that's completely logical,
yeah,
which is he examines it, realizes it's not a baby Ruth, and but when he eats it, he never says it's a baby Ruth.
yeah,
So that brings up that maybe Judge Smales' wife faints for a noble reason. Maybe Carl has never tasted a turd and thinks, now's my chance.
yeah.
And it tastes like a baby Ruth. Exactly, exactly.
Yeah,
And so we don't, because most people aren't academics. They don't break down why the humor works like that, but
yeah.
it's a very specific ritual.
Yeah, and it just works so well because when you see the baby Ruth knocked into the water and it's floating too, and you're right, Bill Murray's character is the payoff for all the joke, really. The people running out screaming like it's a great white shark when it's not is hilarious, and the Jaws music
Yeah,
helps too. Um,
yeah,
it, he's clean like the White has it, and the absurdity of the baby Ruth surviving is funny in itself. Before he even picks it up, he picks it up. He just takes it by. Oh, hey, this is the. He doesn't say what it is, but you know what it is. But you get why the judge's wife faints. It's like she thinks he bit into a turd, and it's
sure.
hilarious in that sense. I like the interaction with the caddies too, as they're like wrestling around after the bill exchange. Oh, Coke's $1, Coke's 50 cents now. wait, what? I'm not paying 50 cents for no Coke. And the one guy's brother jumps on the other guy's back and they knock over the gumball machine. And the
Well,
guy
speaking
who,
of brothers, you know who the manager is?
no,
That's Bill Murray's brother,
cool.
Brian Doyle Murray.
I did not know.
Yeah.
He does a good job running the golf, the caddies. He tells them, hey, complaints are up. There's poor caddying going around. People smoking grass, and it's like he gets it all that, and he reads them the riot act, and it's a lot of fun, like going through these different characters and how fun they all are. But Rodney Dangerfield just adds the icing on the cake. He's the outcast coming in. He throws money around. But you are right about the gopher, though, too. I think the gopher is one of the most funniest things. It too is sort of icing on cake. It adds everything to this movie and then some. Because here's this some comedies, there are comedies that do this too much now where you have this indestructible character and it's just like, it's unbelievable. Caddyshack gets it right with the gopher.
Yeah.
They really do. And because it's a gopher, because it's not real, because they pull it off really well, and you have Bill Murray as Carl who's trying to destroy this thing, and it ultimately causes the ball to go in and for the kid to win, and he yells for before he blows up like a lot of things.
Yeah.
And the gopher coming out coughing, and you hear the music, I'm all right, which started the movie. I mean, the soundtrack to this movie is really, really good too. So, sorry, I went off on a tangent there. So,
No, no, no. That's okay.
but yeah, it's.
You're on low.
Oh yeah, earlier. Sorry.
I'll put peanut butter in the fridge.
Yeah, sorry about that. Um, but yeah, it's everything about this movie.
How low?
I was only 60. I was 66. But with this movie, everything works. The soundtrack, the chemistry, and I know the guy didn't want to go for, but it works. It does.
It overworks.
You know, could you imagine? A groundskeeper for Dark Shadows, and there being a gopher like this? Like seriously?
Carl succeeding Matthew Morgan.
Yes. Yeah.
Dealing with Roger. Because
Yeah.
Roger would be the Judge Smales character.
Yes, he would. Yes, he would. Uh,
What do you give this
Lewis
movie?
Edmonds would have made a good Judge Smells. No?
Yeah. I'm sorry, what was your question?
I said Lewis Edmonds would have made a good Judge Smells.
I think he would have made a great one.
Yeah, absolutely. What's your what's your some of your favorite scenes from this movie?
I mean, so many. There's the one scene that Chevy Chase finally has with Bill Murray because they didn't get along.
Yeah.
There's there's just a lot. There's just a lot. The sequence where Chervik, who's the Rodney Dangerfield character, first comes into the sort of the dinner
Yeah.
and is wandering around the country club. It's just the whole movie just works.
Yeah. Yeah, it really does. Some of my
Jewel, I'm
favorite.
having some trouble with my signal
Okay.
right now. So, do you mind if I cut this just a tad short?
No, it's okay. Obviously the movie's a 10, but link to Patrick McRae's Dark Shadows Day Book Unbound is going to be in the description box. Go check it out if you haven't. Tomorrow we're going to do The Man from Earth. So I'll see you tomorrow night, Patrick.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.